What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit, and I'm super excited to jump into this. We have Lee Willwerth in the studio today, and we were just kind of chatting about business and how he grew. And I love how he said, like, if you would have told me several years ago that I would have made my career in sales, or that I would have then been leading a team in sales, I would have been like called you a liar, right? I love that, because like when we start businesses, we start them because we have either purpose, passion, expertise. We have a goal. We want to build this thing, and we never think about that selling piece in the aspect. So I'm excited to talk about a little bit about that. But we have Lee in the studio today to talk about a nonprofit and an organization that they're building. We had he's partners with Catherine Juon, who's been on the show. It actually was 3 years ago. I was talking with Lee on Friday. It was like, oh my God, it was 3 years ago. Literally, a tree fell on my house the day before I interviewed Catherine. And so I came in kind of like scrambled, and I thought she was going to be there in person, and she was in Minnesota. And so we ended up doing a Zoom. But it ended up being a really awesome conversation that led into a really cool relationship with Catherine. And I got to coach Catherine one-on-one, and then she introduced me to some of her friends that ended up into some really good relationships. And we've constantly come back and catch up. And I particularly love hearing her stories about her missions and what she's been doing in South Africa. And I remember by a year and a half ago now, she was talking about kind of the things that happens in South Africa and the challenges that are out, and it's like the TIA, like this is Africa, right? And like the rolling sweeps throughout the day of losing electricity, or, is there internet, or just all the different things that we take for granted. And at the time, I was coaching a team they're on EOS, and they had some salespeople. The salespeople on their team were just really like, they had a hard time finding good things. And so I was doing like some gratitude, and like they were really having a hard time finding what they were grateful for. So I shared with them the story of what Catherine shared with me, what people are going through and how they're still making it work. They're finding, you wake up and you have the internet. You don't have to even worry about it, like just the things you don't have to worry about, like going down the street and whether you're going to get shot at, or, just the different things. And so I loved hearing that conversation. And then several months ago, I was able to, again, get an update from Catherine, and she started talking about how her work and working with an orphanage and in South Africa has really led into this nonprofit. And so we scheduled, because she moved back into Michigan from Minnesota. And I'm like, let's have you on. And then last minute, it didn't work out with Catherine. She had to go do something else. But we have Lee in the studio, and I'm super excited to dive in. We're going to talk a little bit about Lee and his business, and also this mission. So I'm super excited. Welcome, Lee Willwerth.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Super awesome. So, man, first off, let's talk about kind of, you said you met Catherine through...
Yeah, we met, it was probably 2007, 2008, something like that, in Sandler Sales in Ann Arbor. We were both students at the time.
Yeah. And
she was running one of her early businesses, and didn't get to know each other real well there, but we interacted through the classes and so on. And then kind of lost track of each other for over a decade. And then when some things came up, which I'm sure we'll talk about here with opportunities in Africa, we got reconnected, and so we're kind of partners in this crazy adventure that we've gotten ourselves into.
I love, I'm fascinated with how relationships work, and how you meet people, and how those people lead you to other people. And, so I love hearing that, and how you met, and then there's a 10-year gap, and all of a sudden now you're really kind of in the thick of things.
Yeah. Well, I met around the same time. I met another woman, business person in Ann Arbor, Marissa Smith, who again lost track of her a little bit. Same thing. Met in Sandler Sales. Fast forward years later, I'm looking for an EOS implementer, and saw on Facebook that's what Marissa was doing. So I reached out to her and said, "Man, here's a blast from the past," And she and I had kind of kept in touch a little bit more, and so long story short, we ended up hiring her to help us implement EOS at Dreammaker Bath and Kitchen, which is my primary business. And she's been awesome. I mean, she's just, as a shameless plug for her out there, she's amazing.
Yeah.
As is Catherine. They're both just great at what they do. But so we ended up working with Marissa, and when opportunities arose that I had some harebrained ideas for maybe implementing EOS in Africa. I talked to Marissa about it, and she said, "Oh, I'd love to, but I'm up to my eyeballs, but I have this friend." And so I said, "Well, what's your friend's name?" Catherine Juon. I'm like, "Oh, I know Catherine." Had no idea she was doing this too. So anyway, she got us reconnected, and the rest is history.
So isn't that so interesting that both of them ended up in EOS?
Yeah.
You met them, obviously, neither of them were doing it.
Neither one were. No, they had their own businesses. Yeah.
And then how did you find out about EOS?
So I'm Dreammaker is part of a franchise.
Yeah.
And our franchisor runs on EOS. Now, a lot of the franchisees, EOS says that really 10 employees is a kind of about the starting point. You need to be 10 or more to really make it work well.
Yeah.
Most of the franchisees are right about that or just under, but there's a few of us that are bigger than that. So they've been running on, franchisor's been running on it for quite a few years, and they introduced us to it and said, I think we really ought to look into this.
That's so cool.
And so we did, and started. We, like many people, we considered self-implementing. Kind of started down that path and realized how hard that was going to be. Started talking to some implementers, all of whom had done the same thing, had tried to implement it themselves, eventually failed, hired an implementer, implemented it very successfully, moved on, got what they wanted out of their businesses. And I'm like, maybe I should just listen to other people's experience and maybe skip that first step and go right to the success part, So there's my plug for all the EOS implementers out there. It's extremely helpful.
It's so powerful because it's so hard to stay on that task. Also, you have emotions in it.
Right.
So what I've seen when an implementer comes in is they can stand outside from that.
Yep.
They're not tied to the daily stuff, and they can ask really clear questions to get you back on track. And
yeah, it's really hard to be part of the team and the one leading and guiding the discussion. That's just, more power to the people that can do it, and of course there are people that have successfully done that. I'm just not that good. So,
so the idea for taking EOS to sell that to Africa was your idea?
It was kind of it was I had been working in Africa for several years, probably by 5 years at that point. I did my first trip over there in 2017 as a part of a church mission team, and just completely fell in love with the country, fell in love with the kids, everything about it. And we had a large team, about 25 people. We came back and, just really wanted to get involved and started talking to people in the community. And one thing led to another, and suddenly we have the school system that wants to get involved, and the superintendent of schools wants to get all the kids involved in collecting books, and and they want to ship furniture over there so the kids have furniture in their cafeteria, and furniture in their houses, and all this, and suddenly everybody starts getting excited, right? And this is our church, right? This is not what a church does, right? They're not set up for this. And so, long story short, I got together with 8 or 10 of the people, and we formed an organization called Care Village Outreach, which was a nonprofit designed to kind of help support the Care Village orphanage over there. And over the years, we've sent 7 containers full of supplies, shipping containers. We've sent numerous teams over there, over 100 people over the last 7 years, and we were able to bring internet in for the kids and just a lot of things that made their day-to-day lives better and easier. But the challenge was with all of those great things, and they were certainly very helpful, and we'll continue to do those sorts of things. The challenge is we were never really able to make a change in the outcome for the kids.
Yes.
The way it works is they're subsidized somewhat by the government. They get about half their funding from the South African government. And so when the kids hit 18, they got to go, Problem is, they were pulled out of very poor communities with very little means, and now they have nowhere to go. And so the kids almost invariably end back up, where they came from, back on the street. Girls end up back in the homes of the abusers they were removed from, So it's just
kind of like a Band-Aid.
It's just a heartbreaking thing. I mean, the organization there, Care Village, was doing a great job of keeping the kids, educated and healthy and all those things until they're 18. But at that point, the state says you got to let them go, and then what? So despite all of our efforts, we really hadn't been able to move the needle on the outcome, right? And there were a lot of challenges. They're very, very cash constrained, very financially constrained, and so they would hire the people they could afford, big hearts, but
little pockets.
But they just didn't always have the skills they needed, the leadership and management skills, and so on to run the organization. And so, I was sitting having a beer with the co-founder of Care Village Outreach after he had just gotten back from a trip, and he was kind of unloading on some of the challenges and things that we were running into. And I said, and we were about 6 months into our EOS journey at that point with my business. And I sat back and I said, man, what they really need is EOS. And, not really having any idea of what I was getting myself into. And he said, yes, that sounds great. Tell me about it, So I explained it, and he's like, yes, that's exactly what they need. They need to build an organization that can solve these problems. There's nothing we can do to fix them, right? But maybe we can help them build the organization. So I said, well, that's not something we can do, right? I mean, this is all them. We can help and support and encourage, but we can't implement EOS there. That they have to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but one thing led to another. I went and had dinner with Marissa Smith and said, hey, I have this crazy thought, but I need help. I need an implementer. And so she introduced me to Catherine, and, Catherine did the 90-minute meeting, and, we kind of toed through the process. And every time we had another conversation, that door opened and people, approached it the right way. And next thing we know, and this was, I guess the first thought of it was February of 22. And by August of that year, there we are. We're in South Africa doing a focus day, and it went on from there. We did focus day in August, and their vision building days in September. So we're just coming up on the 2-year anniversary.
That's so cool.
And US is not a silver bullet.
Yeah,
but there's been a lot of hard work, and they are really starting to build an organization that has the ability to really fundamentally transform the lives of the kids, long term, and really get them all the life skills, the job training, job skills, entrepreneurial skills that they want. They can support themselves.
Because that's really like the answer when they're there, right? Is giving them, as opposed to just that kind of safe place.
Yeah.
On top of it, giving them skills where they can go out and build a better life. Right.
So part of EOS is that, you have your organization build a 10-year, big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And so their goal is that every child that passes through this orphanage, and there's 108 kids there. So this is not a small, this isn't 10 kids in a house.
Yeah.
It's 108 kids. So, but they want, within 10 years, every child that passes through there to leave being able to stand on their own 2 feet and support themselves. Now, they're leaving into a world where unemployment, the official unemployment, is 45%. That's all age ranges lumped together. Now, if you're talking 18 to, say, 27-year-olds, it's about 60 or 65% unemployment. So that's the world they're stepping out into. Not a lot of skills, but tremendous amount of competition for
that is
jobs.
Insane in the sense of only 45% of you are going to be able to be employed.
Yeah. Highest unemployment rate in the world.
How do you begin to fix that?
It's not easy. The challenges are numerous, and the resources are limited. But I think the first thing to do anything, the first thing you got to do is to be able to build an organization that can tackle those challenges one at a time, and work through them. They have Care Village has committed to eventually over the years here being able to be separate from government funding so that they can do all the things they want. So they don't have to turn the kids out when they're 18, right? They can get them into after high school education and vocational programs and that sort of thing. So so that's kind of where we're at. So then fast forward to their 1 year. So this would have been August of 23. And Catherine's with me there in Africa, and we were there for their annual. And they've now, they're a year into this. They've really set themselves up for some big goals. One day it kind of hit me as I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, so I told Catherine, I said, yeah, you and I need to go for a walk. And she said, okay. So we went out and we started doing laps around the property there. And I said, Catherine, are we helping or hurting?
Ooh.
She said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we have successfully allowed them to dream big dreams. But are they possible? So if the answer to that's yes, that's great. If the answer to that's, I'm not sure, have we helped them or hurt them?
Oh, no
By giving
kidding.
them the ability to dream these big dreams and to really dream to be able to make transformational change. And so out of that conversation grew yet another organization. So within about a month, that conversation, Catherine and I had founded Empowering Change Incorporated, which is a nonprofit geared toward partnering with visionaries in really difficult locations like this that have big visions for really fundamentally transforming the status quo. Using EOS to meet them where they are, help them build the skills, help them build the leadership team, help them set the visions, structure the organization the right way, really walk with them in that, supply the coaching, the mentoring, and so on to implement EOS and to build that organization so that they have a chance to reach that dream. And then once all those pieces are in place and they've got the organization, the structure, the accountability chart, everything working in the right way, then meeting them where they're at with financial support to help make it possible. Because what I realized is that you can, if you want to improve something by 2 times, you can probably bootstrap that within a limited context if you're smart and careful.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to fundamentally change the equation and go for transformational change, 10x the solution, that may or may not be possible with very, very limited resources. And so we are Empowering Change. We're about creating the organization first, and then coming alongside with the support and funding if we're able to.
So how are you doing that?
So we're young and mighty, right?
Yeah.
So, this was just last October that we got this started. We have a fractional integrator, EOS integrator from Michigan here, who started out just coaching over there and supporting them. She's actually functioning as their integrator for the moment.
Oh, awesome.
Kind of a transitional thing, all remote. She's been there. She's amazing.
What's her name?
Kim Galbraith.
Oh, I know Kim. Yep.
Do you know Kim?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, Kim's great. She's doing a great
I was thinking
job.
it was Kim because I've seen pictures of her in Africa recently on Facebook.
Yeah,
so,
she was there just in February, and actually she and I are going
February.
back.
That's how fast time flies by.
Yeah.
I said recently. It's been
Right.
it's been a few months.
Well,
But
it's recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. She and I are going back again in about a month. So, so she's doing a great job. For the first time, we feel like they've got a leadership team that works as a team. It's not just the visionary in the room telling everybody what's going to happen, right? So that's really cool to see. I mean, it doesn't mean that all the problems are gone. The problems are still there. But the first step to solve the problems is you got to have a team in place that is capable of tackling those problems, those challenges. And,
Most of the thing is that EOS doesn't take the problems away, right?
No.
Putting those pieces in place doesn't take the problems away in any, whether it's your business or the orphanage,
Right.
It just gives you a system to be able to deal with,
Right.
And strategize those around those problems and issues.
Yeah, EOS is about, harnessing human energy and human vision and getting everybody aligned in the same direction. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't think EOS is ideal for nonprofits. I get that. It wasn't designed originally for nonprofits, but to me, a nonprofit, it's really it's just the goal. Are you trying to make money? You're trying to solve a problem. I mean, either one's trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So you have to adapt a few things here and there, but you're just trying to align human energy, and that's what EOS is all about.
Yeah. So tell me, because Catherine was telling me this whole story about a young lady that you were kind of building out, doing some like admin assistant stuff, and she was telling me some of the not realizing some of the challenges that you even think about,
Yeah. So another mildly harebrained idea. You're seeing a pattern with me, aren't you?
It's the visionary, like we talked on Friday.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, when Catherine and I got together, which, she's telling me she's an integrator. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're a visionary. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, you get close to some of the kids there, and a young woman that I'd spent some time with there and had left, and she was 20 at the time and had gone on her own in the world and was doing her best to make it, and was really, really struggling to find work and was at a point where was at risk of losing the place that she was living and risking ending back up on the street. And I couldn't have that, but couldn't imagine what I could do. And I was kind of, bemoaning this to Catherine one morning, and she said, well, I do need an executive assistant. I wonder if, And so out of that, another organization was born. So the Inyanda Project is really, that's another organization Catherine and I have put together. That's a for-profit organization, but we're really focusing on trying kind of the dual efforts of trying to create opportunity for job skills, or create employment opportunities for kids there.
Yep.
And also at the same time potentially raising funds, kind of leveraging the exchange rate.
Yep.
Exchange rate's 19-1, and so if we can figure out strategies for employing people there and selling the services here, not only does that help both ends, but it creates enough profit in the middle, hopefully, that we can funnel that back into continued job training and so on. So I said it's a for-profit organization. For-profit's kind of in big air quotes because that,
how much profit are you really bringing in?
Not really. And anything we do bring in, we'll get plowed right back into, training and so on. It's just, we're not trying to make a living off of this at all. And so we've got a couple people there working. We've got a young lady who's working with Catherine's business, and a young man who is doing IT work for my business, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Doing
IT work from afar. And
yeah. Well, it's all things that you can do remotely. I mean, having come through the pandemic, we've all learned how to do this stuff really well, right? It's old hat to all of us now,
When you think about that from the IT standpoint, that job training for them I can imagine how valuable that is.
So this fellow did not come through Care Village.
Okay.
He's in the same world with the same employment issues, right?
Yep.
I think he's 27, but he actually was a data analyst.
Okay. So he has that experience.
Had some experience there, that we weren't starting from scratch there. And as you said, there's, things sound really simple. Oh, I know. All we need is a VPN and a computer and, a little training and we're off and running, right? Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than that.
I mean, she was going through and telling me kind of some of these challenges because you think about, okay, we'll just get a VPN or whatever. And they don't have phones.
Well, they have, cell phones.
Yeah.
And actually landlines are not common there. I think a lot of areas in the world, once cell phone networks, suddenly those are much easier to deploy. A lot less infrastructure, right?
Yep.
You plunk a cell tower in and you just covered 100,000 people.
Yep.
Right? So cell phones are pretty common. I mean, pretty much everybody has them. And they're necessary because they do work when the power's not on. So
that's nice.
Yes, there's that.
Again, we're talking to a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs here that as you're building your business, who does help you? How do you take? I just had a meeting. I do a one-on-one every week where we hold each other accountable. And his goal right now is to hire an assistant because he's posting social media and doing that kind of content stuff and building that up is hard for him to do, especially when he gets busy. And he's going into a 2-week period right now where he's going to be super busy. And he's like, I've got to put this on the back end. So our talk today was, how are you going to get yourself an assistant? Because this stuff, if you keep, it's not going to be consistent, right? Mm-hmm. And it's an L10. I don't know what I'm talking. We do an L10 every week together, and it's like being two solopreneurs. We're doing it together, right?
Sure.
And but so it sounds from that business landscape, I guess what I'm babbling on about is trying to say is like, it's such a good idea because the exchange rate being that 19-1,
Right.
you know, they can make pretty good money. Yeah, you can fund them, you give them some skills, a purpose there. But as you're putting it together, what are some challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to get to the point where, you know, the solopreneurs, we could be an organization that could give them the resource that they need, whether it's fractional or full time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they know that they are helping to lift people out of, you know, the situation that they're in and give them an opportunity to build skills and to grow and to build a life and make a decent living and all of that. So it's kind of a, you know, you're killing two birds with one stone there.
This exactly is. It's a valuable service. It's needed, but at the same time, it does have that whole soul to it too.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'd love to see us get to that point at someday. The challenge we have, and we're working toward this, you know, you need, you know, I'm here, Catherine's here. I mean, you have an employee that's just learning 10,000 miles away. That's, you know, working virtually, once you know the role and once you know what you need to do and you're used to that kind of thing is one thing. Working virtually when you're just starting out, you know, that's a whole different thing. So building the infrastructure on that end so that we have experienced people, you know, executive assistants that can be training and coaching and supporting and making sure that they're staying on task and, you know, getting the things done in a timely fashion and all those sorts of things. One thing is a challenge.
And I don't know if this is probably something you guys are doing, but when you're talking about the orphanage supplying like these skills and trainings, is one of them going to be kind of like that executive assistant track?
I think so. Yeah, I think that will probably be one of the ones that they work towards because that is a very employable skill, both there and here.
Yeah.
There's a huge need there for technical skills. This isn't something that we could, you know, outsource to here or, you know, or sell here in this country, but locally there, you know, I talked about how high the unemployment rate is. Partially that's due to lack of jobs. Partially it's due to lack of skills. So there's more jobs going unfilled. There's a lot of jobs that are unfilled, even though it's a really, really high unemployment rate, because you've got a workforce that does not have the skills that matches the jobs. So what's happened over the last couple decades is there's been this huge exodus out of South Africa of basically anybody with professional skills that could get out. You know, they have a job to go work in, you know, another part of Africa or get to Europe, get to the United States. There's farm workers here. There's, you know, all sorts of different things. So
they're losing. So
there's just been a big brain drain. Yeah, and so there's a lot of jobs available if you have the right set of skills, and that's what what Care Village has set their sights on, and they want to get to the point where they can, you know, create vocational training schools and things like that to give the kids the skills to go out and get the jobs that the country desperately needs. You know, pipe fitters and machinists and electricians and plumbers, and you know, there's a lot of mining and things like that, and the mines all need these kinds of people, right? And they can't get them, and yet there's 45% unemployment, right? It's just the skills don't match what the country needs.
This is so awesome, like seeing it kind of come together and kind of seeing where this could go.
Yeah.
Because you have this orphanage that could really like make a huge impact even on their country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's and we talked about helping people dream.
Yeah.
The gentleman that founded the orphanage 20 years ago, his name's Andre Brandmuller. He's an attorney. He's a bird of a feather. He had a harebrained idea one day. And here he is 20 years later, going in an orphanage, right? And, but he is just so passionate about trying to, you know, to get these kids the skills that they need and so on. And when we first started the U.S. process 2 years ago, I had known him for about 5 years at that time. And I had watched him, you know, kind of get more and more tired. You know, the orphanage had survived by sheer force of will, you know, just absolute refusal to give up in the face of anything that came their way. And, but, you know, it's one thing, your business isn't working so well, you close it up, go on and do something else or quit your job. I mean, you got 108 kids.
What do you do with that?
Quitting really isn't an option, right? So, so he was, but as of 2 years ago, you could tell he was just burned out, as you would be. I mean, it'd been a long 18-year slog.
Trying to save the world by
trying
yourself.
to save the world alone, right? And so EOS for me as a visionary, EOS was as much for him to hopefully save him, right? And it has. I mean, he is on fire for the future of what can be achieved, and it's not just Care Village. What he sees, his personal 10, 15-year vision is multiple organizations like this across Africa that can start to make a dent in what the challenges that the country has as a whole, and getting kids that grew up in very, very tough environments and were removed from their homes, breaking that cycle, that generational, wash, rinse, repeat. It's really exciting to watch. It's exciting to see him. I mean, he's working on transitioning his business to his son, so that he can spend more time on this, it's been a huge transformation for him.
It's so, I mean, I love it because you feel like you're probably doing good for the world with the whole orphanage thing, but then you kind of see that dead end, of, are we doing, even him probably asking, are we doing more good than not, or more bad than good because you're giving them a Band-Aid, really. They have a place to stay and comfort for a while, and then they're right back to where they came from with really hopelessness. And I'm sure they feel that even during their time there. They know at the end of the day that they're going back to wherever they came from.
Oh, and I've sat and talked to kids that were within months of kind of reaching that line where they knew, okay, I'm gonna matric. That's graduate from high school.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I know what's next, and I'm scared. I don't want to go back to where I came from. I don't, and that's heartbreaking.
That's heartbreaking to see that. Then to be like, to rise to another level of solving a problem is so huge. I love that his dream is to have several organizations doing this, because you look at, again, a huge problem that the country itself has. This whole podcast, I love, it's all about how we solve people's problems, right? I think as entrepreneurs, as, that's really what we do is, if we're doing it right, is we find a problem, we solve it, and we solve it for our people. But finding those ways to solve world problems, it reminds me of, I'm losing the name of the Malcolm Gladwell book right now, but it's like the study of human success, and just talking about how, like, when things line up. And I'm reading this other book right now called The Story of Charlie, and it's super, super incredible. But he's like, in this part I'm in right now, he literally, this guy was, World War I, he was a doctor, and he was going through the Great Depression, went through these major struggles, and built up his doctor's practice. And by the time he hit this critical moment of his life, he had built up his doctor practice, and then he literally signed himself up and went into World War I. Wow. And he was like, it was talking about in the book how he's at this critical point of, like, giving up on this thing, right? And like, sometimes somebody would say you're going to miss out, because when you leave, your practice is going to evaporate. You're not going to have that to come back to. Well, when he went into the military, they made him, there's so little known about anesthetics and that kind of thing back then. There was no penicillin was just on the cusp of being discovered. And so all these kind of things were happening all at one time. And so the military made him the head of anesthesiology, because he had said in his interview that he knew he had given anesthetics. And so because nobody knew anything about it, they're like, you're head of it. And so through this program, and all of a sudden anesthetics had a major shift. There's this famous doctor out in, I want to say, Iowa, that had come up with how to give the proper anesthetics. And anyways, because he was the head, he ended up getting this major training that ended up shifting his life. And he gave this doctor practice, but he came out of the other end a whole other person. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, the whole, going back to the Malcolm Gladwell book, is like, there are these things that happen in our society, like the right place, right time, and this movement could be that right place, right time for Africa, to all of a sudden those kids can look back and, like, those, as they're grown adults, that we're more successful, or the country's better because these things happen.
Right. Yeah, it's the whole process for me, and I think Catherine too, has really felt surreal because it's very clear that we're not in charge. You know, I don't know where it's going. I just know that I'm not driving the boat, right? And the doors that keep opening, the contacts, it's just, weekly, Catherine will call me and she's like, okay, so you're not going to believe this. Yeah, at this point, I probably would. Just the people that fall out of the sky that have connections to Africa and want to help. And, it's crazy. I mean, we discovered a little over a year ago, what we didn't realize is within the EOS world, and I don't want to extend what I actually know about their organization because I'm not inside it, but I know that there is some movement within the EOS community to really embrace the use of EOS in nonprofits. And there's many people that do it very successfully, but it's starting to gain a little bit of traction, within the whole EOS world, and it's something that they kind of want to focus on. And so we've kind of come along at that time and kind of fallen into that. And as part of that, and last August when we went for their annual, EOS Worldwide sent a film crew with us and spent the whole week filming and everything. So they're working on a docu-series that hopefully will be available here.
That's so cool.
At some point, but it's up to them how they handle that. But yeah, it's I'm hoping that maybe we'll trigger thoughts, for other people elsewhere in the world, here in the U.S., to utilize the skills that they have, whether they're a business owner that runs on EOS, or they're an implementer, or they're to use the skills you have, because nonprofits, they're always short on money. That's, particularly in developing countries, it's, even more so than here, but it's kind of the plight of a nonprofit is you're always short on money, right? That's just kind of the way it works. But more than that, many of them are just short on the skill sets. You've got people with a lot of passion and drive, but maybe they're not able to afford the types of training and skill sets that you need to build an effective organization. And so that's what empowering change is about. So maybe if we can be a little bit of an example to encourage other people to find out what they're passionate about, what causes they're passionate about, and what organizations are struggling to make transformational change someplace. And use your skills, get in there and help them.
That's so huge, and I love, because that's made me think about just now my original conversation with Catherine when she was first on. She was talking about how EOS has helped her make life decisions, know, and she was, the particular story she was talking about was going through breast cancer and like being able to make a quick decision on where she was going to go next by using, making EOS part of her life,
right?
And to really kind of go back into it and making EOS part of that life and instilling it in nonprofits and organizations that really have a passion, a purpose behind it, to give them the tools to be able to thrive.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the hope. I mean, we'll see how it works, but I've certainly had witnessed a lot of transformation just in the last couple of years, and so. We're actually working with two organizations over there now, the orphanage, but we're also working with a Christian school, St. Peter's Christian College over there in the same town. That is actually, we've gotten many of the kids into that school because it's a really good school. But, like every other organization that's really trying to do great things, they've got challenges and struggles and, trying to build a leadership team that's effective and, all the things, right?
All the things.
And so, Catherine's implementing for them as well. And so we'll see. But we didn't pick a cheap place to do work. I mean, getting to and from Africa is not cheap.
I was wondering what all that logistics look like and how often you guys go and all that good stuff.
So I typically go once a year. I would love to go more, but I just don't, running the business and so on, I don't have the time. Catherine's going with me in August, and actually she's going back in December. She has signed herself up for an amazing bike race, which I'll let her tell you about.
Oh, that's so cool. Awesome. Okay.
So it's yeah. I mean, I'm sure eventually we'll get to the point where I'm going a couple times a year, but right now I like to try to get there once, and it's generally in August and that's when their annual is set up for. So that's a good time to kind of do the visioning and everything, be there for that. So
couple day event.
Yeah, but now I've got an employee over there, and we've got a lot going on.
So what does that look like? Because again, you have this employee. How do you manage them or lead them, or how do you give them the tools and the resources and all that stuff?
So I'm visionary at Dreammaker Bath and Kitchen, but I do still I'm not really in sales or operations anymore, really functioning primarily as a visionary, but I do still do a lot of IT. That's where my background is. So he kind of works for me, and I've got another part-time IT person contract here in the U.S. that does kind of on-site things as well. So, but development work and so on, he works with me from Africa. But so we get together at 8:00 every morning on Teams. And
what time is that there?
2 p.m.
Okay. Not bad time, actually.
No, it's not bad. No, and it's before my day really starts. And so I get up, a cup of coffee, get everything ready for the day, get ready to go to work. And then I sit down, I do my half an hour with him, make sure that, we know what he needs to get done for the day. And then I go off and get my day started. And that, that way he can kind of get started on it. But if he wants to work into the evening, he can. Or if he wants to just wait till the next morning to work on stuff, he can get most of a day in before we're ever in the office. So it, it's working pretty well. It's not without challenges.
Oh yeah.
And most of the challenges are just me learning how to manage someone from that far away.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah. And is Catherine doing the same thing with
her
assistant? Yeah.
Yeah, she does. Yep. I think for them it's like 6 a.m. they meet.
Yeah.
Catherine has this crazy schedule. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, 8:00's fine.
8:00 is good.
8:00 is just fine.
I can't function at 6 a.m.
No.
So you mentioned the Dream Kitchen and Bath. How does all this work? How does that coincide? And what does that look like for you?
So, yeah, I mean, I have been very blessed to work with some people there in recent years that have been able to take over a lot more responsibility. My wife and I started the business about 20 years ago with another couple, built it up over the years. In 2018, we bought their shares out and ran it, on our own for just a little bit. And then in 2020, right in the middle of a pandemic, because this is what you do, we ended up merging with a company out of South Lyon and rolled their business into ours. And so the owners of that business have come in and have gradually taken on more and more responsibility in the business, and they're doing great. And I know most of the day-to-day functions they're handling. My wife handles finance and manages the accounting department and so on. But so that has allowed me to kind of embrace my visionariness. Most of us in businesses, it's a little hard to, we start out really, really visionary.
Yeah.
And then we become integrators and we get buried in the integration of the business. And then we kind of want to get back to our visionariness. And so we're like, well, but if I can just hire a couple more people, and then, now I need another layer of management, and now I need right. And so it just
there's always another carrot.
There's always another carrot, right? And right. This is how a business works. And but as a visionary, you're constantly trying to get back to that. I just want to be a visionary. I want to live in my sweet spot, right? It has taken a lot of years, but I'm kind of back to that, which is pretty cool.
Let's see, what's that like?
I get to spend time mentoring other leaders, empowering other leaders. Most people say when you start to back out of your business, I don't say back out of it, but you start backing out of some of the day-to-day responsibilities that a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they're put out to pasture. I'm like, no, not at all. Not at all. I like watching other people take on the responsibility and helping them succeed, seeing them flourish in those roles. To me, that's part of the fun of the whole process.
I think you're probably able to shift your focus, though.
Yes, so I'm able to shift my focus. We're in the middle of some large projects, some things that we're trying to do to really streamline processes, and those are the things that I'm involved deeply in. We're working on, new business lines, new markets, things like that. That's where most of my effort is going into.
Like in the episode last week, their guest Ron Jess, we were talking about shifting. Like when you retire, when a lot of people, especially men, retire, they end up dying soon after. And it was like he was getting close to retirement age, and he had to shift his focus to what is my true passion. What do I want to be doing with the rest of my life, and really figuring that out. And it's kind of like, I think about that as kind of probably a similar thing for people that have been running a business. They get so used to doing all those things, they never shift back to being that business owner of working on the business. And it feels like they are being put out to pasture. They vision themselves being like, oh, I'm useless. But if their
identity became what they did in the business, that was their sole identity.
Yes, that's exactly nailed it.
And that's just not. I mean, we're all told what you need to do is to grow a business is you need to make it grow so that it runs without you, right? That's what the goal is.
Yeah,
and that's always been my goal. I have always refused to have my face used on. Well, there's other reasons, right? I'm not that, but I've never wanted my face used in marketing. I don't want it that tightly associated with me personally. It's the team. It's not me.
Yeah.
You're going to get the same experience working with any of the team, not just me. I don't want it to be about me. And so maybe that kind of that thought process that I've always had is about building a team that can do it better than I can do it. That's really the goal, right? And so then when that happens, it's like, well, why would I feel bad about that happening? That's what I've been trying to do.
That's what you've been trying to do. Right. It's what so many people try to do.
Right. Yeah. But I understand that's not always every entrepreneur's experience,
Yeah. And again, I think it, the point being that if for people paying attention, it comes down to a mindset, because you and the person that feels like they're put out to pasture are at the same point.
Yeah.
It was just your thought process was always like, this is where I'm working to get.
Yeah.
And they could even always say, one day I'll do this, but then they lost their purpose along the way and don't realize that giving back and teaching and mentoring and working on the business from another level it's where you shift.
That's right. And that's what excites me, right? And I don't think I will ever be the person that lacks for stuff to do. There was a time in my life when I thought, someday I'll retire and then I'll get to rest and I'll get to play and I'll get to do all this stuff. And over the years, I've realized, no, that's not ever going to be in the cards for me. It doesn't mean I won't have fun and I won't do things I love and all of that. It's just the things I love aren't going to look like sitting in the rocking chair with a glass of iced tea. It's just not. That is just not in the cards for me. I've just realized that finally.
Well, it's getting real and understanding what we do. Some person's happiness may be just sitting in the rocking chair,
and that's great.
That's great.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just I've realized that was the image of retirement I had growing up.
Yep.
And it's taken me a lot of years, but I've realized that that's just never going to be my lot in life, because I have these harebrained ideas and I just can't not go after them.
I guess, what formed you into who you are now? Like, tell me a little bit about like growing up, or, what formed you, I guess, into who you are now?
I would say, to a large extent, my father. My father was he was a musician. He's a classical trumpet player, played with a lot of major orchestras around the world, and very, very fine trumpet player, and just a really amazing human being, but very, very multi-talented. He when I was growing up, we lived in Mount Pleasant, in Michigan, and he taught at Central. He was a teacher there, as was my mother. She's a pianist, and she still lives here in Ann Arbor. So, but growing up there, he was, he would decide one summer, I'm going to teach myself to paint. So he'd go out and buy a bunch of art equipment, and pretty soon he was he was painting pictures, and he was pretty good at it, and or he would decide. And when I was probably 11 or 12, he decided that one summer he was going to learn to fly. So now most people, when they learn to fly, they go out to the airport, they find an instructor, they buy a lesson or two. Is how they start, right? No, this is not how my dad worked. My dad's first step in learning to fly was to buy an airplane. He'd been teaching in the summers and saving some money. And so he took a little of his savings money and he went and bought himself a little airplane. And this is how you start. He had never sat in a small airplane before, but he owned one. And this was my dad, right? This is just kind of what I grew up seeing.
Yeah.
You decide that you're going to do something. And the thought of, I don't know how, or I can't. And this was before the days of YouTube, right? That just never crossed his mind. There was never occurred to him that there was anything that he couldn't do. And that's just that I kind of grew up around that, and there were things that he always wanted to do that, he, for various reasons, financial and otherwise, just was never able to do. One of which was mission work. And his father had been a Nazarene minister, and he grew up in that world and saw that, and so fast forward to probably about 1999. I guess in 98 he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he survived quite a while, but ultimately passed from it. But during that process, he was going through his affairs and kind of setting up his financial situation to take care of my mom, because he knew this was only going to end one way. And part of the process was he kind of set up a charitable trust. It was a great way to avoid some taxes. And so he set up a charitable trust, and he said, well, I would really like to do something with some of this while I'm here. And so he thought, I'd really like to do something to honor my parents. And so he contacted a Nazarene church and said, I want to do something. And so he started the conversation. Long story short, he ended up building a church in the Dominican Republic. By this point, he was wheelchair bound and couldn't travel. And so at that time, I was relatively newly self-employed. I had my own business, but it was small and it didn't have huge commitments yet. My time was flexible. And so I ended up being kind of his hands and feet going back and forth to the Dominican Republic. So that was 2000. It was 2000. And so I made, 6 or 8 trips back and forth during 2000, working with a couple of missionaries there that were there charged with rebuilding a lot of the churches that had been destroyed by hurricane, and became close friends with them. And, and it kind of, I watched the same thing there. I watched a process unfold that none of us were in control of. And it was really kind of life-changing for me. So for me, that was kind of that experience. I mean, he didn't do it for me, right? But he did afford me an opportunity to be involved in something that transformed me. And I don't know, he passed in 2000, so I don't, I'm assuming he's watching, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So anyway, but that kind of lit the fire for me. And I remember thinking at the time, man, how cool would it be if I was in a place in life where I could just do this? And I think to some degree, my subconscious has been working towards that for the last 20 years, right? Haven't really thought about it that in those terms most of the way.
Yep.
But I think, once you set your mind, you convince your mind that something's possible, right? It will work its way towards that, whether you're thinking about it or not.
Well, and then all of a sudden, the crazy coincidences, right? The Catherine calling you up and being like, "You won't believe this conversation that I had," and all of a sudden this happened.
If you believe in coincidences,
right? If you believe in coincidences, it's like those people, those opportunities, those things always surround us. But when you're subconsciously or now consciously, I'm sure it's even more powerful as you're being conscious about what you're doing, and all of a sudden, even more doors and coincidences happen.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot to that. That certainly what you're putting out there, tends to bring back to you. That's just kind of the law of attraction, right? But from my perspective, I'm a Christian. I believe that there's doors that are being opened because there's something I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
I don't know exactly what that is, Well, I don't need to know at this point. My job is just to step through the doors that are opened.
Have you read the book, The Alchemist?
I own it, but I haven't read it.
Oh, you've got to read this book. It's all about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about chasing, following your personal legend. And as you do, God puts those signs and the people and the things that happen, the opportunities. He makes it easy for you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go download it on the way home so I can start listening to it on the way home.
Great, phenomenal book. I think you'll love it because it's all of this.
Yeah.
It's, and it's things that aren't linear. It's like all of a sudden, you don't just all of a sudden make it. You get taught these lessons. You get stuck at this spot because you're supposed to be there.
Right. Yeah, and it's once you feel that you are a part of something bigger and that you have a role to play, though you may not know what that role is yet, giving up when stuff gets tough really isn't an option. It's kind of like I was talking about Andre with the orphanage.
108 kids.
If this is just something that, I kind of like doing this stuff and I like flying over to Africa and hanging out with the kids and, things get tough. You
just bail.
You just bail, right? No. But once, in your gut, that God's doing something here and I have a role, apparently, that I'm supposed to be playing. And I'm not sure what it is yet, but I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other and hopefully it comes clear. Right?
Hopefully one day
Yeah, but if you believe that, despite how hard things get, just saying, what am I going to say? No to God? No. Right? So it's I've seen it. I've seen that play out in my life more than once, and it's very humbling.
I'm so glad I asked that question. I didn't even ask it very well, but you had such a great explanation and story about your dad. I love that, and I love it because I don't know how much he probably thought about it or how much how in depth. But you think about being able to do that thing while he was alive.
Yeah,
build the church in the Dominican. Going through that, like I wonder if you ever put any thought of how much of a legacy that builds into you.
Probably not. I don't think any of us can see that far.
Right? You don't have that foresight
into the future. Because it wasn't about me.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't, it shouldn't
That's
have been.
The thing. It wasn't.
It wasn't about me. It wasn't supposed to be. He couldn't travel and he needed someone to be his eyes and ears. And, for the last year of his life, that was probably the thing that kept him alive as long as it did, because I would go down there and I'd have my high 8 camera, right? Because we didn't have anything digital at that point, right? So I'd have my high 8 camera, I'd take video and pictures and everything, and I'd get off the plane and I'd drive up to Mount Pleasant and I'd plug it into the TV and we'd watch the videotape and he could see the progress and that was pretty exciting for him. It was a lifelong dream for him to be able to see this. Now I wish he had been able to see it in person. They dedicated the church. A lot of my family went down, and my mother went down to see it. And in fact, I went back to see the church 2 years ago. It's the first time I'd been back. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good, I guess. Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
It seems to be doing well. But yeah, it's that was a very formative experience, and I haven't really thought of it as much until fairly recently, and kind of you understand your life in retrospect.
Yeah. Yep.
Most of us are just kind of going through the motions every day, it seems like, and some of us seem to have a better knack at kind of planning things out than others. I don't know if I'm one of them. I'm a visionary, right? I don't plan anything.
It just happens. I wake up one day with a harebrained idea.
Harebrained idea, right? Oh, hey.
I love you said that a couple of times. I think so many people listening will resonate with that because we think we're crazy. Like when our friends tell us we're crazy.
I heard an awesome quote. It's probably one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard. I got this from a talk at the EOS conference here in April in San Diego. And it said, visionaries are the cause of and the solution to all the world's problems. I'm like, wow, that is really, yep, that's true.
That's so true.
We are the cause of and the solution to all the problems. Like, that's me. I admit.
The only thing is, there's so many of us that don't have integrators that come and help us put the action into place.
Right? Exactly.
We have so many ideas and none of them get launched.
Well, and actually that was one of the biggest aha moments for me with one of the most valuable things regarding EOS for me personally was the whole concept of the visionary and the integrator. For most of my adult life in business, I thought there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because I really I wasn't the best manager, I didn't think. I just wasn't all that good or passionate about all the things that it took to run a business. And so I just figured, well, I'm just kind of bumbling my way through this. I'm just not that good at this, but I'm getting by, right? Well, then I realized, well, it's because you're not an integrator. I mean, I can do it. I've managed to do it for a long time, but I'm a visionary. And just for me, the realization that that's a thing, right? It's a real thing, and there's other people out there like us.
Yeah.
And that a successful organization needs both. It really needs both. And sometimes, yes, you have to play both roles. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Whichever way you're wired, you got to play both roles. But the whole realization, it's like, wow, I'm not alone. There's other people as crazy as me out there.
I think that's huge for the audience listening to this, because it is that realization that, oh my God, I'm not crazy. I wasn't meant to have to do all this stuff.
Right.
Because we come up with ideas, and then all of a sudden our joy is stolen and our energy is taken trying to implement implement this thing, and it's because we're not meant to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's been huge. That has been absolutely transformational for me. Just my way I view myself. It doesn't mean that I don't have to integrate things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And, thankfully, I'm at a point in life where the business is big enough that I do have an integrator. He does a very good job. Takes over a lot of the things that just are not my strength.
One I loved when we talked on Friday, you talked about, we weren't even really talking about this, but you talked about how you and Catherine work together and how she'll kind of set some things up, and then you go, from there, and how it's really lined up to that visionary integrator.
Yeah, it kind of has. And even though she is, I wouldn't say she's acting as our integrator in that capacity. She's really our networker. I mean, if anything else, she's probably our sales and business development arm. She's just a great networker.
Yeah.
I mean, and anybody that will listen to her, she'll talk about Africa, right? And so she connects with a lot of people, and we've kind of clarified our roles where that's concerned. She kind of does the connecting because she's just a more natural networker. I'm very comfortable one-on-one or one to a group.
Yeah.
You put me in a structured conversation, that's fine. But just naturally going out and seeking out people, and that's just not me so much.
Yep.
It's very much Catherine. And so she makes the connections, and then she gets the conversation started. And she's like, well, you really need to talk to Lee. And so then, my assistant gets a email. Hey, you need to set this person up with Lee. And so
it's a phenomenal process.
It works great. I'm fine. I mean, I tell them, look, I am very happy. Just tell me a time and a place. Send me a Zoom link. I am happy to get on and cast the vision anytime, anywhere, to anybody. Not looking for anything, just happy to talk about it. Right. And so it has worked out. It's worked out pretty well.
Speaking of kind of like those resources and everything, what are some resources, people, what are some things that can be helpful for your mission? Yeah.
There's various things. We are kind of looking for additional people to help with some of the work over there, as far as helping coach people to lend their skills, whether it's as a integrator coach. But like I mentioned, we're starting to work with this other organization over there. We need to support our operations too. We're not making any money on this. And so far it's been funded predominantly through our board members. Entirely through the board members. But we need to gradually start building a network of people that are passionate about doing this kind of work with these kind of organizations that can help support financially, as well as support with their time and talents and so on. And like I mentioned, we want to get to the point that once the organization we're working with has the organization in place, they have the leadership team, they have all the skills, all the vision, everything, the organization's in place to be able to start to move that needle with financial support. So working towards building endowments here in the U.S. that can be funded in the U.S. to help really make some huge fundamental transformational changes in some really tough areas of the world.
Well, because going back to the beginning, that's a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that you can have a great dream, but
Right.
it also takes the resources.
It takes money.
Capital.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it takes money. And, just doing what we do, I mean, it's amazing. Obviously airline tickets to and from South Africa are not cheap, so we minimize the travel back and forth. But, just the day-to-day operations of maintaining internet connections and, just all the logistics of, the communication and the work over there is it doesn't come free. But it is, it's really, people have often asked me when this sort of thing comes up is, why Africa?
Yeah.
And my answer is always the same. I have no idea. I don't know. It's where God put me. I don't know. When you see him, ask him, because I don't know. I really don't. Because oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, there's so much need here in the U.S. Yes, there is. You're absolutely right. I have no idea why Africa.
Yeah. It's not your.
That wasn't my decision.
Calling.
It wasn't my calling. It wasn't my job. It's where God put me. It's where he lit my passion. And yeah, it's 10,000 miles away. And yes, it's a 16-hour airline flight to get there, and it's complicated, and it's 6 time zones away, and it's in the wrong season, and and they drive on the wrong side of the road.
They drive on the wrong side of the road.
But I don't know why.
How is that challenge, driving on the wrong side of the road?
Oh, it's hard. It is hard. I did it for a week. I usually avoid driving when I'm there, because we don't generally need to. There's people there that drive us around.
Yeah.
But last year, I think it was in 2022, I guess it was, my wife and I spent a week down in Cape Town, and we had to rent a car. So, you get off the airplane and you go out to Hertz, and you get in the rental car, and you're on the wrong side of the car, and it's rush hour in Cape Town. It's like, okay, well, all right, your job is to make sure I don't turn the wrong way on something. I'll make sure we don't hit anything. And literally it took 2 of us to drive that car most of the week, because it's just everything's wrong. Entering a roundabout and turning to the left and watching to your right. I mean, it's just, everything's just backwards.
Oh, so crazy. That is so crazy.
Yeah. But we survived.
Yeah.
We survived. And then there's street signs that you don't know what they mean. Symbols on the roads, you don't know what they mean. I have no idea what that means.
May have committed a crime. I
may have just committed a misdemeanor. I don't know. But at least things are in English. That helps. That helps a lot. The signs are in English. You may not be able to pronounce the words, but they are.
Well, because that was another challenge, Catherine. I totally just remember that. How many national languages are there?
I think 11.
Yeah.
I think it's 11.
That's insane. Do most of them speak English?
Most do. Yeah. So for us, it's really not an issue. They understand. Someone opens their mouth and they understand what their background is and what community they come through and where they grew up. And by the way they speak English, even they can tell by the accents. I'm not that sensitive to that.
Yeah.
And so it's a very culturally complex world. There's just an awful lot of different groups originating from different places. Some originally from Africa, many Europeans, and just a lot of different groups that have all interacted in, as we all know, in South Africa in the past in some not very healthy ways, right? That are, those are in the past, fortunately. But still, it's only
still carries over. It's not that long ago.
4 years ago, 32 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like it's not that long ago. It's, maybe a generation, not even that. And so it's, there's just an awful lot there. And to Americans, okay, well, some of you have dark skin, some of you have light skin, but you're all South African. I don't know the difference.
Right.
Right. But to them, obviously there's a lot more, meaning behind a lot of those cultural ties and history and all that.
It's the thing we don't think about in different cultures and stuff like that, because again, we look at it and you're all South African.
Yeah. It's, but it's interesting. And I'm still learning. If you want to learn something about South Africa, read the book, Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Or actually, better yet, don't read it. Listen to it. Okay. Download it and listen to it. It's hilarious because he reads the book.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, and he's a pretty, it's a comedian, pretty funny guy.
Yeah.
Right. And this is about his life growing up in South Africa and townships and stuff. And I learned more listening to that book than I did in all the time I've spent there about the cultural nuances. And there were just so many things that I'd be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, now
so
I get it.
If you read it and you didn't have that experience, it wouldn't make any sense.
I think it would, but I mean, it just having seen these things, and there were just so many cultural nuances that I was oblivious to, and then reading the book, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, but just a great book. I mean, you have you laughing and crying and
all the stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Trevor, if you're listening to this, there's my pitch for you. So you can.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, that's awesome. That's awesome. What do you? So people listening, how do they get involved? If somebody wanted to get involved and help out.
Yeah. So best way is to reach out probably directly to either Catherine or myself. At empoweringchange.org. My email is Willwerth, L.Willwerth or Lee.Willwerth, at empoweringchange.org. And I'm sure that will be in the program notes here.
Show notes,
but if you feel passionate about getting involved or reaching out or just learning more, I mean, I have all these conversations with people and they always say, well, what is it you're looking for? To have a conversation. That's it, really. I don't approach them with a laundry list of what I want or anything. I just opportunity to share what we're doing and to see if it resonates with you and, let God take it from there. And if you're somehow supposed to come along in this journey with us in some way, shape, or form, then it'll happen. That's not my job. My job is just to have the conversation and to share the vision and let God do the rest.
It's so awesome. I feel like as you're even saying that, like it sounds like so far with God doing all the work, it's pulling in, like when you're having the conversations, it probably makes it much more apparent what's supposed to happen versus asking for something.
Right. Well, and it's a little hard sometimes because, we're taught that we need to have a plan and we need to know exactly what we're looking for and we need to go after it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I get that. And that's there's value in that. But God is very willing to let you march off a cliff if you insist on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's like, the whole free will thing. Yeah, okay.
Have at it. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea, but, yeah, I mean, so to some degree, balancing that planning, appropriate amount of planning with a sufficient amount of, okay, God, where are you taking this? Where do you want this to go? And leaving room for that. Leaving time and space and room for God to do what God does, right? And not insisting that, nope, I'm going to go this way and I'm going to take it right off a cliff. That's a hard balance, right? In business and life and the sort of work we're doing is really learning to balance that. And yeah.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah. So when you get that all figured out, let me know.
I'll send it on over to you.
Okay, great. Shoot it over an email.
We'll get it covered in an email for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming down. This has been such an awesome conversation.
It's been great. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm so glad we were able to connect and get a chance to meet you and learn more about your story. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having me here, and it's been a great adventure, and it's not over. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right. Take care.